Hi, Assalamualaikum. Today we will continue for our topic 5, which is on the differences of IASB and also IOFI conceptual framework. Previous video we've already learned the definitions of accounting from the Islamic perspective. We already learned how to differentiate Islamic accounting and also conventional accounting, and we also know the objective of financial accounting reporting for IFIs. Now we will take a look at the differences of IASB and also IOFI's conceptual framework. So the differences is basically based on the concept. We will learn on based on the concept lah, the difference too based on the concept, principles, and also the conventions of these two regulatory body. So before that, we have to know lah, IASB is usually a regulatory bodies that develops framework or a standard that usually conventional institution yang akan gunakan that accounting standard or any regulatory standards inside of the institution lah. For IOFI is a regulatory bodies yang akan develop and also create a standard for Islamic banking institution. That is the difference. So now you know these two regulatories punya role. Right? Kita nak tengok dia punya differences based on the Takaful, deposit, financial versus investment, ownership, right obligation versus the risk and reward, and also the substance over form. Right now, for the first one, we take a look at Takaful lah. Okay, according to research by International Sharia Research Academy for Islamic Finance, ISRA, research paper, there are three key issues related to Takaful, which is meaning that the differences between IASB and also IOFIs, we will take a look based on the definition of Takaful that is not covered by IFRS or IASB, and the classification of cards provided by the Takaful operators, and also the nature of financial statement reporting in Takaful companies. Basically, this is all the issues that is not in IASB framework lah. Kiranya. That's why kita nak tengok difference of these three elements between that two regulatory bodies. Okay, so this is basically IOFI's Takaful standard, meaning a standard under IOFI conceptual framework. So there is ada FAS 12, ada FAS 13 on the disclosure of basis for determining and allocating surplus or deficit Takaful. So this is all of the list of the standards under IOFI Takaful. Okay, then meaning this is one of the standard under IOFI, which is on the PND, isn't it? PND. So under FAS 12, they have a standard or like rules for statement of financial positions, statement of policyholders, revenues and expenses, income statement, statement of cash flow. This is all of the statement that required under FAS 12 lah. And also inside here, they ada mention the rules and also possible steps to be followed. Right, sama macam IFRS, but this is for Islamic ataupun IOFIs yang keluarkan standard tu. Okay, and then we also have the guideline by Bank Negara Malaysia 2 guidelines that provided by them, which is MASB, this one, and also MFRS 4, related to Takaful, yeah. And then the guideline by Bank Negara Malaysia also have stated on this list of, the punya list of rules lah, all of these related to Takaful, meaning all of these guidelines, all of the statements, and also report, this one is the notes, right, will explain related to Takaful, but it is a guideline by Bank Negara Malaysia. For FAS 12 is a guideline by IOFI Takaful, right? So what is the requirements of Bank Negara Malaysia to Takaful providers? First, Takaful operators need to furnish Bank Negara Malaysia the financial statement by, meaning that any Takaful providers or institutions need to follow these requirements by B&M lah. So first, they need to inform the bank in writing 3 months in advance if any intention to change accounting policies under para 22 of MFRS 4. So according to according to Bank Negara Malaysia, any Takaful providers need to inform the bank a written contract, like written information about 3 months in advance before they change any accounting policy. So they need to inform 3 months in advance to change any accounting policies too. As for reports, they need also to report on the assets and liability of Takaful funds separately from assets and liability or Takaful operators, meaning Takaful providers also have to report the banks related to the asset and liabilities of Takaful funds, kan? But they have to report separately lah, separately between this one asset and liability of Takaful and also asset and liability of Takaful operators, right? Dia macam different things, different operators. This is for the operators, this is for the fund. So the Takaful providers tu need to report to the bank separately lah. And then dia juga kena present family Takaful contract liabilities, meaning they have to present the punya contract of the liabilities for family Takaful, and they have to report it investment link contract as Takaful contract. All of these they have to, meaning this is all is the requirements for Takaful providers to follow by Bank Negara Malaysia. They also have to disclose all expense liabilities there. Disclosure of expense liabilities. Okay. Next, so here baru kita boleh tengok dia punya difference between Takaful and also insurance. So Takaful basically is the Islamic terms lah for Islamic banking, and insurance basically is the conventional terms for conventional bank. See, dia dah tulis kat sini kan, Takaful for IOFI and insurance for IASB according to the punya standard lah. So kita akan compare based on the criteria. This one ada banyak criteria, so we will take a look one by one. The first criteria is on elements of gharar, which is uncertainty, maisir, gambling, and also riba. Now we take a look at the kafar, whether elements ni ada ke tidak. Okay. For Takaful, dia cakap kat situ, it is prohibited all of these elements because it's contradict with Sharia. Of course, Takaful, like I said, it is for Islamic banking purposes ataupun Islamic banking ataupun Islamic punya insurance types of insurance lah. So mesti kalau kat ada negara maisik and riba ni means dia bukan syariah compliance lah. That's why for takaful they prohibited all of the elements. For insurance dia ada contains all of these elements, meaning dia ada element uncertainty, ada gambling kat situ, ada riba kat situ. That is the difference for like these three kinds of elements lah. Okay, how about the Sharia supervision? Okay, for takaful, the objective is to ensure that the activities of companies are carried out according to principle of Sharia. Of course, takaful mestilah in accordance to Sharia. But for insurance, it is not Sharia supervision, meaning dia punya activities for under insurance ni, it is not Sharia compliance lah. For account, okay, takaful ni, the account known as tabarruj, okay, which means donation. The other one is treated in line with the principle of mudarabah. Okay, if you guys remember, mudarabah is about partnership, isn't it? So partnership when one invest to the company and another one will actually run the business. So in terms of account, takaful ni dinamakan atau erti kata lain dia dinamakan account dia as tabarruj and means donation. Means one will invest to is one will donate to the people lah kiranya yang going into takaful punya contract ni. Kan? And another one will use that money like that. Okay. As for insurance, how about in terms of account dia? Dia cakap the account is known as general insurance account and life insurance accounts of fund. Meaning macam kita dah tahu conventional insurance ni memang kita selalu memang terkenal lah kiranya. So it's like a general insurance account, mean when once invest to the people, once satu tu seorang the company will bagi duit and finds the people, and another one the people tu every month dia akan bayar insurance dia, betul tak? Or every year dia akan bayar certain amounts of insurance, but then at the end of the period, if that person required like cover by the insurance, so the insurance company will pay or will cover any loss of that person. That is the conventional insurance punya works lah, how it works. Okay, next. On bonus. See, on bonus, takaful specifies from the outset how the profit from, and also takaful investment are to be shared between the operators and also the sahib ulmal, the participant. So meaning the bonus of that takaful tu dia based on the profit from. Okay, and also they akan share the bonus between the operators and also the participants, meaning between the takaful and also the participants of that takaful lah. Okay, as for insurance, they may offer bonus or profit in general terms, only especially with profit policies. There is no exact specification with regard to the profit sharing in contract. Meaning, macam takaful, dia profit dia akan share, but as for insurance, dia tak akan share kiranya. There's no exact specification to share the profit. And it may also decide to give or not to give bonus for any particular year depending on the result of the investment return. So meaning nak memberi bonus kepada participant, dia akan decide lah kiranya, dia depends on the investment return. Okay, dia akan decide also. As for the investment, Takaful ni pula, dia cakap the fund shall be invested in any interest-free from Sharia justified scheme. So dia akan invest to any interest-free from Sharia lah. Kiranya company yang ada interest-free and also compliance with Sharia. And then the entire procedure shall comply the guidelines of Sharia investment return must not be driven by any unethical commercial activity. So, in terms of investment, Takaful ni akan invest in a company that have no macam activity yang related with interest free, and also dia kena company yang dia nak invest tu must be compliance with Sharia and also the guidelines of the Sharia investment return tu. And also the company also tak ada not be driven by any unethical activities. As for insurance pula, dia may be also invested in interest-based scheme. Like macam insurance memang conventional, dia tak kisah pun involved in riba, isn't it? Sebab tiga elements tu dia still prohibited in insurance company. So they may and they might invest in a interest-based scheme, and they can also be invested in any scheme or project which may not be supported by Sharia discipline. So meaning insurance company ni might involve in the interest-based scheme and also might involve in any non-Sharia compliance punya scheme or project. Okay. That is the difference. Next differences. We move to the nature. The nature of both Takaful and also insurance. For Takaful, the entire operations aims at paying the way of brotherhood, solidarity, and also mutual cooperation. As you all know, Islam tu is like a way of life, isn't it? So apa aim Islam sama macam aim Takaful. Relate back with makasih syariah pun boleh. So dia mesti mementingkan hak kebajikan masyarakat, isn't it? So that's why the aim is to paying the way of brotherhood, okay, solidarity, and also mutual cooperation. Mesti give back to the society. As for insurance, the nature is aims a commercial gain on the basis of the principle of business. Meaning commercial gain ni probably a profit lah from the participants. So insurance ni tersendiri, meaning the conventional insurance is profit based. The nature is a profit based institution. So memang secara amnya memang the aim is the commercial gains lah. As for the regulation pula, Takaful ni it is regulate ataupun based on kita punya divine sanctions lah, which is the Quran and also hadis. Ni kita tahu dah kan. As for insurance, they based on the human thought and also culture. Sebab apa? Meaning the rules of insurance law ni is man-made. It's not from Allah and hadis, from Quran and hadis, but it is man-made. Human yang create the law. So the regulation is based on human thoughts and culture lah, based on their cultures and thought. Next, as for contract, Takaful ni, the participants own the Takaful fund and managed by the operator. Then the participant give up individual's right to gain collective right over contributions and benefits. So basically untuk Takaful ni, kita ada participants and also the operator. So the participants ni akan own the Takaful fund, but the operators ni akan manage the fund lah. Well, like macam tadi saya cakap, dia like mudarabah. isn't it? One will invest and another one will operate. This same goes to Takaful. It's like a mudarabah contract. Participants yang own the Takaful fund that is managed by operator. So the participants tu akan give up dia punya rights, individual rights, not money but individual right to gain collective right over a contributions and benefit, meaning to gain any benefit at the end of the period. Same goes like mudarabah contract lah. But for insurance pula, dia macam buy sales contract, meaning ada sales, ada sellers and also ada purchasers. So the policy holders is the purchasers. So that is the difference based on the Takaful lah kiranya. Next, as for deposit, okay, that one is for Takaful. So the differences of IASB and also IOFIs on Takaful dah habis. Now kita tengok in terms of the deposit. So in terms of deposit, we will take a look the differences in 3 terms lah. On the current account deposit, on investment deposit and also on the saving deposit. Okay. Terus masuk ke comparisons atau the differences for IOFI deposit, kind of deposit, and also for conventional deposit. Okay, for IOFI, dia punya current account deposit are based on the principles of amanah, wadiah or that of card. Okay, macam kita tahu wadiah tu is a deposit, like memang deposit. A deposit atau a place to save an asset as a custody, saving custody. As for conventional, dia macam based on the conventional principle lah, but it is still a deposit but based on conventional principle. It is not based on the wadiah principle ataupun amanah. Okay, IOFI punya deposit, of course, interest free because it is an Islamic punya standard, but conventional ada interest. IOFI, the funds treated as amanah, but as for conventional, the funds treated as a tool to generate profit. Of course kan, macam wadiah kan terbahagi kepada 2. Satu, safe custody based on trust, and also another one tu based on guaranteed. So untuk IOFI punya deposit is treated as a amanah of some custodians too. Okay, the fund that are used in the operation must be based on Sharia compliance manner. Of course, the deposit based on the Sharia compliance, but as for conventional, it is non-Sharia compliance as long as it can generate profit. Of course, conventional is a profit gain punya institution, profit centered punya institution. So anything it must be related with the profit, even though it is non-Sharia compliance. IOFI then, kita move, the depositors will be rewarded in terms of hibah, but it is not fixed based on the bank performance. Basically, normally, if you macam perasan, dalam account bank kita ada satu terms atau dalam kita punya historical punya transaction lah, akan ada satu deposit, duit kita akan didepositkan, meaning kita akan dapat duit, and then dia punya terms tu ditulis hibah kat situ. So hibah ni is basically a gift from the bank based on the bank performance. For us, depositors is kita lah, right? As for conventional, dia akan guarantee the returns, meaning for example like interest, meaning dia akan dapat interest lah based on the return of that profit, right? Okay, next, the depositors for IOFI, depositors tu allow bank to use the money for the investment, but must be in Sharia compliance lah. As for conventional, they're not compliant with Sharia. Itu je termsnya. Antara kalau nak bezakan antara dua deposit based on IOFI and also conventional atau IASB ni. So macam saya cakap, IOFI is like mudarabah. We have one depositors and one bank. So the depositors tu like investor lah, dia as a robuman investor, and the bank tu is the mudarib, who is to manage the funds of that depositors, to run the fund. Macam you have to relate back with mudarabah contract. As for conventional, the return is higher for LT depositors and lower for short-term depositors. LT is long-term, so the return tu akan lebih tinggi for long-term depositors and rendah sikit for short-term depositors. Now, move here lah. Profit will be based on the predetermined ratio agreed by both parties. Relate back with mudarabah. Of course, the profit of depositors and banks are predetermined by the ratio agreed by both parties. Same goes to conventional. That's why they put like this. The same goes lah. They akan based on the pre-agreed ratio. For generally pays in a joint investment pool with other depositors mobilized by the Islamic bank. So dia akan join an investment pools to gain like a fund that mobilized by Islamic bank. But as for conventional, same, sama, but it is not mobilized by Islamic bank lah. It is mobilized by conventional bank. Oops. Okay. But it is the same, cuma mobilized by Islamic bank for IOFI and mobilized for conventional is conventional banks for conventional punya depositors. Okay. Next, deposit arranged normally based on mudarabah concept. Okay, like I also stress out this pasal mudarabah ni. And the returns for conventional returns on investment is higher for long-term depositors and lower for short-term depositors. This is same goes sama macam yang atas ni. So macam ni tak ada apa pun. So ni pun semua kira sama macam IOFI punya differences of deposits lah. Kiranya kalau ada loss, it is ni semua akan relate back with mudarabah, kan? If loss will be bound by mudarabah, robumal, which is the depositor. Okay, and the profit sharing wage age are assigned based on the various tenure and the amount invested under arrangement. So the profit sharing tu akan assign based on tenures and also the amount invested under the arrangement. Kira same goes to investment conventionals lah. And this one allocated to a number of investment pools and the Sharia bank invest pools amount in Sharia compliance business. So the investments pool tu must be in Sharia compliance. Okay, ini if bank also contributed equity, involve musyarakah and mudarabah contract. Okay, kalau bank ni ada related ataupun contribute in terms of equity, dia akan gunakan contract musyarakah and also mudarabah lah. So dua-dua ni is like a partnership yang dia kena pre-agreed ratio atau profit ratio dulu. Kan? That is for deposit. The differences in terms of deposit on IASB and also IOFI. Okay, move to the financing and investment pula, investment terms pula. So investment account fund in Islamic finance institution. So ini kita tengok based on Islamic finance punya institution financing and investment lah. Nanti kita tengok conventional ataupun IASB punya financing and investment. Okay, untuk IFIs atau Islamic punya financing and investment, dia kata an IFI's major source of fund is unrestricted investment account fund from its customer. Meaning customer tu can invest to the accounts of Islamic bank unrestrictedly. Meaning customer tu bebas invest ke dalam account Islamic bank itu. Okay, but and that is the major source of IFIs jugalah, from the funds of that customer tu tadi digunakan as the source of the fund. And then these funds are generally managed by IFI based on Mudarabah investment management based profit sharing agreement. Meaning Mudarabah kita dah cakap tadi kan, one will invest ataupun customer tu akan invest to the funds and the IFI tu akan manage the fund, right? Manage the fund based on the profit sharing agreement. Under Mudarabah investment management, IFI is not liable for the loss arising from investment except due to IFI's misconduct negligence. So, relate back with Mudarabah contract, disebabkan IFI ni hanyalah dia punya mudarib, customer is the Rabbul Mal. So the loss, siapa yang akan liable for the loss is of course the customer. But sebab IFI tu is just a mudarib, it's not Rabbul Mal, kan? But except if IFI ataupun mudarib ada lakukan misconduct ataupun negligence lah, and it is must be the Syariah standard. Mudarabah ni Syariah contracts kan, so this is based on the Syariah standard lah. IOFI juga is a standard that required unrestricted investment account fund to be presented in statements of financial position as a separate item between liabilities and honest equity. In contrast, based on IFRS, this would be presented as liability along with other deposit. Okay. Under ni dia macam bagi beza lah antara IOFI and IFRS punya cara dia orang present dia punya investment terms tu. Kalau IOFI, dia represent dia punya unrestricted investment of the customer tadi tu under financial statement atau SOFP separately between liabilities and others equity. But IFRS ni dia hanya present under SOFP dekat as a liability je along with the deposit. So this is basically the differences of presentations in SOFP between these two regulatory bodies lah. Okay, this is a comparison between trade-based financing and also interest-based loan. So dia dekat dalam under the same topic ataupun subtopic, tapi between trade-based loan and also interest-based loan. Kita compare between based on the characteristic yang hijau ni lah. So the first characteristic is the legal nature of promise. So the trade-based financing, which is the Islamic base of financing lah, the bank has to purchase the requested commodity before selling it to the customer. Ni macam biasa kita punya Islamic punya kontrak yang ada on musyarakah, ijarah pun ada kan, bank kena beli dulu baru boleh jual balik kan. And then for interest based loan, the customer is required to make a unilateral promise to buy the commodity from the bank before the bank makes the purchase. So interest-based loan cara dia macam ni. Customer tu dulu unilateral is like one promise only and another one silent, right? Dia bukan bilateral punya promise, bukan dua-dua promise, but hanya seorang je yang promise, which is the customer, to buy the commodity from the bank before the bank makes the purchases. So kena ada promise from the customer dulu untuk beli from the bank, baru bank tu akan mulakan dia punya kerja lah kan, purchase dulu ke orang yang dia nak beli the commodity tu. But trade base tadi tu bank kena beli dulu baru dia jual kepada customer. Okay. As for profit sharing, trade based financing ni kan, price includes a known profit or markup. The markup in murabahah is part of the sale price. It is set only once and then it does not change over time. Macam saya cakap, concept on legal nature of promise and also profit rate ni the concept of murabahah concept lah kan. When bank purchases the commodity first, then baru dijual balik ke customer by in markup price. So the markup price tu is represent dia punya profit lah. Okay, mana? Represent punya profit lah, which is ni non profit ataupun markup, represent dia punya profit. As for interest based loan, the profit tu comes from the interest rate. It's come from interest rate. That is the perbezaan based on the profit rate. Now kita tengok dia punya fixed and floating rate. Based on the fixed and floating rate. Kalau trade based financing, dia based on murabahah tadi kan. So the murabahah financing product tu are fixed rate product. Sebab dia tak change over time, tak ada interest, tak ada apa, dia dah fixed. And the rate once determined for a given contract, it is not allowed to float with changes in the interest rate or any other rate. So because dia dah fixed rate, dia tak akan ada float. There are not allowed any float with changes of the interest rate. The fixed rate disebabkan dia tak ada interest di dalam murabahah financing ni, so memang tak ada floating rate lah in terms of dia punya rate in terms of the product. As for interest based loan, many conventional banking product are floating rate product. Okay, tengok dia adalah floating rate product. The rate on such loans are automatically adjusted upward or downward in line with the changes in interest rate. So meaning the product tu, dia punya nilai produk tu akan meningkat atau menurun based on dia punya changes in interest rate. So meaning dia tak fixed lah, the product amount is not fixed. The product loan or interest is not fixed and it is floating. Kan? Dia bila interest rate tu meninggi, dia akan turun tinggi. Bila interest rate tu rendah, dia akan turun rendah. Dia bukan macam trade based financing, dia fixed je. Next, on rescheduling of payment. For trade based financing, murabahah does not allow such rescheduling as no additional amount can be charged for the same. And the amount of the murabahah price remain unchanged. So meaning that dia punya payment kan, the one wants to purchase an asset from the bank tu, based on murabahah tu, dia tak allow rescheduling of payment. Okay, meaning sebab kan price tu dah fixed. Okay, so dia tak ada additional amount to be reschedule lah. Kiranya kalau in case dia kata rumah tu harga dia 10,000, so tetap fix, tak boleh reschedule to add another like 10,000 ke, tak boleh. Tapi for interest based loan, loan rescheduling is accompanied by additional interest charge for the timing differences. Okay, contoh, house tadi harga dia 10,000. Okay, for interest based ni dia macam based on time differences. Kalau interest tu 10%, so tambahlah 10%. Kalau certain period tu interest dia 9%, so tambahlah 9%. So that is interest based loan. It is not macam trade based loan. The fix je, dia tak ada any tambahan. Even though macam for quite sometimes lah. Sebab tu dia kata rescheduling of payment tu, dia takkan reschedule the payments. For rebate on early payment, okay. For trade-based financing, dia cakap if it is given voluntary, the rebate tu given voluntary, really, it is allowed to give the rebate voluntarily. The rate of discount must not be pre-specified in the murabaha contract as a condition. It is not a right that the debtors can claim. Meaning, rebate tu boleh diberikan volunteer. Bank boleh bagi rebate kepada customer voluntarily bila customer tu buat early payment lah. Kan? So the rate of discount tu dia macam not be specified in mudarabah contract, meaning the rate tu tak ada pun stated in the contract as the condition, dia tak rate, but dia macam volunteer je. Kalau rasa bank tu nak bagi rebate, dia bagi, kan? But the debtors atau customer juga tak ada right lah to claim that rebate. Dia macam up to the bank to give rebate to the customer or not, and even not in the contract between them lah. As for interest-based contract, conventional financial system to grant the borrower a discount or rebate if the customer decides to pay early than the scheduled time. So macam trade-based financing tadi, dia depends on the bank whether dia nak bagi rebate atau tak nak, sebab dia tak ada pun dalam contract. And also the debtors have no right to claim that rebate. As for interest-based loan, dia memang berikan that rebate or discount tu to the customer if dia punya customer tu pay early than the scheduled time. Okay, that is for financing, the third difference, which is on the financing and also investment. Next, we move to the ownership and also control. Okay, we take a look at IOFIs first lah. Dia cakap, and IOFIs major financing mechanisms are operating ijarah and ijarah muntahiyah muntamlik, which is, the meaning is leasing that ends with transfer of asset ownership to lease. And ijarah tu kan sebabkan ownership kan, macam kita rent or leasing, isn't it? So for both asset ownership rests with IFIs throughout the lease term. So meaning, for example, in terms of IFI ni akan bagikan ijarah contract to the customer. Betul? So the customer ni within dia punya lease term tu, contoh 7 years, within that 7 years, dia punya ownership is IFIs punya ownership. But at the end of the 7 years, ownership tu akan diberikan kepada customer, kan? And with leasing that ends with transfer of asset ownership to leasee. So customer at the end of the maturity date, dia punya ownership akan give to the customer. But within the 7 years of leasing terms, memang ownership adalah milik IFIs lah. Tengok balik ijarah contract. Okay, in ijarah muntahiyah muntamlik ni juga, there must be independent contract for transfer of asset ownership. Meaning, dia kena ada satu contract lah on which is the ijarah contract ni. Okay, on assets ownership. IOFI standards required both operating ijarah and ijarah muntahiyah muntamlik to be treated similar to operating lease. Meaning, operating ijarah and ijarah muntahiyah ni is a different kinds of ijarah. Ijarah muntahiyah, muntamlik ni is macam yang saya cakap ni. But operating ijarah ni is not on the asset but just operate the asset. So tapi IOFI standard ni cakap dua-dua jenis ijarah ni to be treated similarly like operating lease. Okay. In contrast, based on IFRS, both operating ijarah, especially if lease term is for major part of economic life or of lease asset, and ijarah muntahiyah ni pula, due to the transfer of asset ownership by the end of the lease term tu, would normally be classified and treated as finance lease. Nampak tak? IOFI ni, dia kata dua-dua jenis ijarah kena treat similarly like operating lease. But as for IFRS, dia kata both operating ijarah and also ijarah muntahiyah ni, dia kena treated and classified as finance lease. That is the difference lah, kan? In terms of profit and loss sharing and also the lender-borrower relationship, tengok kalau ni profit loss sharing, ownership ni based on ownership. Lender-borrower relationship based on the control. So kalau macam profit loss sharing, dia based on the first tier of ownership, meaning between the bank and dia punya depositor. The depositors are considered to be provider of the capital, which is Rob Woodman. The bank function is as a working partner or a manager of the fund. So dia adalah mudharib lah, kiranya the bank tu as the mudharib and the customer or deposit tu is the Rob Woodman ataupun investment. So dia punya profit and loss tu is between the bank and also the depositors lah. For second tiers pula, ada dua jenis profit loss sharing lah. First is first year between the bank and depositors. The second tier is based on the bank, between the bank and the entrepreneur. So dia punya second tier ni, entrepreneur is the manager of the fund ataupun mudharib, right? And the bank tu is the provider of the fund, which is the Rob Woodman. Tengok different dia kat sini, first tier and second tiers tu. Okay, move to the lender-borrower relationship pula. Kalau ni dia cakap the relationship between the lender and a borrower is governed by loan contract between them. And of course lah, kalau loan contract mesti one will have a lender and also one will have siapa yang akan pinjam and siapa akan memberi pinjam. Then such a contract would specify all the obligations of the two parties in every possible future contingencies. So dua-dua lender and also borrower ni akan go to a contract which is the contract tu akan specifykan all the obligations lah for future contingency. With respect to, so under contract tu ada this kind of obligation, which is ada stated the amount of the repayment, ada stated the interest rate on the remaining debt, ada stated the possible adjustment in the collateral requirement by the lender, and also lastly ada juga the action to be undertaken by the borrower. Okay, meaning yang ini for Islamic term, IOFI, this one is for the conventional terms of lender-borrower relationship. Okay. Okay. Next, move to the right and obligations versus risk and reward. Okay. So kita ada dua kat sini, IOFI punya right and obligation and also risk and reward punya perspective, and also IASB punya perspective. For IOFIs, the risk and reward to shared by the depositors and the bank. As for IASB, the total risk is borne by the bank only. Okay, total reward belongs to the bank after servicing the depositors at fixed rate. Maknanya yang ini risk dia bank dia yang akan responsible for it, and the rewards tu belongs to the bank after dia bagi service to the depositor. But as for IOFI tadi, risk and reward tu semua shared by the depositors and the bank lah. And then dia cakap IOFI ni investment is rewarded by profit shared base. Okay, macam mudharabah tadi kan. For IASB tadi, investment rewarded by interest. IFIs, IOFI ni, IFIs cannot invest in government securities, short-term loan, bond and money at call and short notice because an interest-based transaction. So, IFI ni under AAOIFIs ni, IFI atau Islamic Bank tak boleh invest in the government security ni lah, this kind of instrument, because dalam instrument ni dikatakan ada interest-based transaction. But IASB ni dah stated dalam standard dia cakap semua bank boleh invest lah in all of the instrument. Okay. Then IOFI pun stated kan, risk-based transaction has been transformed to asset ownership-based transaction. So the risk tu has been transferred based on the murabahah punya contract lah, kan? But IASB, the transaction based on interest and it's involve the risk. Betul lah, macam ni dia transform the ownership based on the transaction of murabahah. For IASB, dia based on the interest and of course ada risk. Sebab interest rate ni dia floating, dia ada yang meningkat, kadang menurun, kadang rendah, kadang tinggi macam tu. For IOFI ni, the sukuk are ownership certificate and not mere debt securities, hence all risk and reward are shared by the stakeholders. So, in terms of the right, obligation, risk and reward tu, dia ada juga based on the sukuk ownership, sukuk certificate. Kan, yang nak dikatakan dalam sukuk ni ada all the risk and reward that is shared by the stakeholders. Yang untuk IASB, the bond are considered as a debt security. Sukuk basically sama je bond, but it is an Islamic bond. So IASB tu bond as debt security, but IOFI tu is not a debt security. Nampak tak? Not debt security, ni a debt security, the bond tu. Lastly, on the substance over form. IOFI to accept generally acceptance accounting principle unless there is a conflict of Sharia. Meaning IOFI to accept any ni GAAP lah kiranya, dia punya standards of conventional standard tu lah, kira generally acceptance accounting principle tu is GAAP. Right, a principle for accounting kan. Tapi dia akan accept yang ada syariah compliance je lah. In case dia ada conflict with syariah, dia takkan accept. But in particularly, IOFI has shied away from two of the key IFRS principle, which is on the substance over form and also time value of money. On substance over forms ni, economic substance of transaction must be recorded instead of just their legal form. And in terms of time value of money, given by the market risk-free interest rate. Ni just two IFRS punya key yang dia boleh follow lah kiranya. Yang boleh kiranya yang dia kena follow based on IOFI, dia tak boleh follow IFRS. That is only for the differences of IOFI and also IASB conceptual framework. Kita ada 6 differences. So dalam differences atau dalam kriteria tu ada lagi different dia. Okay, next we move to the preparations and presentations of accounting information and disclosure of accounting information.